There are secrets so profound they've built empires and toppled nations, yet remain whispered only in the highest circles of power. Unspoken principles that separate those who accumulate vast fortunes from those who spend their lives chasing shadows. John D. Rockefeller understood these truths better than anyone, and he never once wrote them down or spoke them publicly. He didn't need to. He embodied them. Today you're about to discover why the most successful people in history have kept these rules locked away from public view. If you already feel something stirring inside, you hit that like button and subscribe right now. This channel exists to reveal the hidden architectures of success that most people will never encounter in their lifetime. For centuries, the world's most successful individuals have operated according to invisible laws that govern wealth creation. These aren't get-rich-quick schemes or motivational platitudes. They're fundamental operating systems that rewire how you think about money, time, and opportunity. What you're about to learn has been practiced in boardrooms and private offices for generations, but rarely discussed openly. Today we cross that line and examine what they've always preferred to keep in darkness. Let's begin with the first rule that every billionaire knows, but few will ever admit. The wealthiest people on Earth have mastered something that destroys most ambitious individuals before they even begin. They've learned the devastating power of strategic silence. While everyone else broadcasts their intentions to anyone willing to listen, true wealth builders operate in complete secrecy until their plans become unstoppable reality. This isn't about being secretive for the sake of mystery. It's about understanding a fundamental truth that governs all achievement. When you announce your plans, you scatter your energy across multiple directions. You invite opinions, doubt, and interference from people who have never accomplished what you're attempting. You create social pressure to deliver results before you've had time to properly develop them. Rockefeller never announced his moves until they were already complete. When Standard Oil began acquiring competitors, the business world learned about it after the acquisitions were finalized, not during the negotiation phase. By the time anyone realized what was happening, his position was unassailable. Most people fail because they need validation for their ideas. They want approval from friends, family, and colleagues before they take action. But here's what they don't understand. The moment you share an unfinished plan with others, you give them power over your decision-making process. Their fears become your hesitation. Their limitations become your boundaries. The wealthy understand that big moves require internal conviction, not external consensus. They make decisions in private, execute in silence, and reveal results only when revelation serves a strategic purpose. This approach protects their plans from premature exposure and eliminates the energy drain that comes from constantly explaining and defending their choices. Think about every major business success story you know. Apple developed the iPhone in complete secrecy. Amazon built their cloud infrastructure without announcing their intentions to dominate enterprise computing. Tesla developed their electric vehicle technology away from public scrutiny until they were ready to revolutionize an entire industry. Strategic silence isn't just about keeping secrets. It's about concentrating all your mental and emotional energy on execution rather than explanation. When you're not busy convincing others about your vision, you can focus entirely on making that vision reality. But silence alone isn't enough. The second rule goes even deeper into the psychology of sustainable success. Behind every extraordinary achievement lies something most people find unbearably mundane: the discipline that no one sees. While the world celebrates the dramatic moments and breakthrough victories, the truly wealthy know that empires are built through microscopic daily choices that compound over decades. This is where most ambitious people fail catastrophically. They want the glamorous parts of success without accepting the invisible foundation that makes success possible. They see the penthouse but refuse to acknowledge the thousands of hours spent in windowless offices making decisions that seemed insignificant at the time. Rockefeller's success wasn't built on brilliant flashes of inspiration. It was constructed through relentless attention to operational details that his competitors considered beneath their notice. While other oil executives focused on grand strategy, Rockefeller obsessed over transportation costs, refinery efficiency, and supply chain optimization. These boring improvements created the margins that funded his empire. The discipline no one sees is internal warfare against your own impulses. It's choosing long-term benefit over immediate gratification thousands of times, until that choice becomes automatic. It's maintaining focus when focus becomes painful. It's continuing to work when work feels pointless. Most people dramatically underestimate how boring successful people's daily routines actually are. They imagine dynamic decision-making and constant excitement. The reality is far more mundane. Successful people do ordinary things with extraordinary consistency. Warren Buffett reads for hours every single day and has done so for over 60 years. He doesn't read because it's exciting. He reads because compound learning creates compound returns. Jeff Bezos spent years personally packing books in Amazon's early warehouse operations. Not because it was glamorous, but because understanding operational reality informed every strategic decision he would make later. The wealthy understand that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do difficult things. It's about making difficult things feel normal through repetition. They create systems that eliminate the need for daily willpower by making success behaviors automatic. They also understand that discipline extends beyond work habits into every aspect of their lives. How they manage their health, relationships, and personal development directly impacts their capacity for business achievement. They treat their entire existence as an integrated system where weakness in one area undermines strength in others. This leads directly to the third rule, which explains why most people quit right before their breakthrough moment arrives. Billionaires operate on completely different timescales than everyone else. While most people measure progress in weeks or months, the truly wealthy think in decades and generations. They plant seeds, knowing they may not see the full harvest for 20 years. They make investments that won't pay off until their children are adults. They build systems designed to compound value across time horizons that most people can't even conceptualize. This temporal perspective fundamentally changes how they evaluate opportunities and setbacks. A failed venture that cost millions might be viewed as valuable market research if it provides insights that inform better decisions over the following decade. A successful quarter means nothing if it comes at the expense of positioning that takes years to rebuild. Rockefeller understood this better than anyone. Standard Oil wasn't built through quick wins, but through systematic market positioning that took decades to fully execute. He bought refineries during economic downturns when prices were depressed. He negotiated exclusive transportation agreements that locked in competitive advantages for years. He focused on building market infrastructure that would be nearly impossible for competitors to replicate. The long-game mentality requires accepting that most of your efforts won't produce visible results for extended periods. You plant seeds in year 1 that don't sprout until year 3, don't grow substantially until year 5, and don't bear fruit until year 7. Most people abandon their efforts somewhere around year 2 when they don't see proportional returns on their investments. But compound growth doesn't work linearly. The first years of any major undertaking typically produce minimal visible progress. All the real gains happen later after you've already paid most of the costs. The people who become genuinely wealthy are those who continue executing their plans through the long, barren periods when progress feels impossible. They also understand that playing the long game provides enormous strategic advantages over competitors who need quick results. When you're not pressured to produce immediate returns, you can make decisions based on fundamental value, rather than short-term market fluctuations. You can acquire assets when they're cheap, because you don't need to sell them quickly. You can invest in capabilities that won't pay off for years, because you know those capabilities will eventually become decisive competitive advantages. Long-term thinking also changes your relationship with failure. Setbacks become data points rather than verdicts. A strategy that fails this year might succeed next year as market conditions change. Skills that seem useless today might become valuable tomorrow as technology evolves. This connects directly to the fourth rule, which explains why some people create exponential wealth, while others work harder, but achieve proportionally less. The wealthiest individuals don't try to work more hours than everyone else. They obsess over finding decisions and opportunities that generate asymmetric returns. They search constantly for situations where small inputs can produce enormous outputs, where one choice can eliminate thousands of hours of future work, where one insight can multiply results across everything they touch. Asymmetric opportunities exist everywhere, but they're invisible to people who think linearly about effort and reward. Most individuals assume that working twice as hard produces twice the results. But the truly wealthy understand that the right decision at the right moment can produce returns that are 10 times or 100 times greater than incremental improvements in work ethic. Rockefeller's greatest asymmetric bet was recognizing that controlling oil refining and transportation would be more profitable than simply extracting oil from the ground. While his competitors focused on finding more oil fields, he concentrated on dominating the infrastructure that all oil had to pass through regardless of where it was discovered. This single strategic insight generated more wealth than any amount of additional drilling could have produced. Modern technology has created asymmetric opportunities that dwarf anything available in previous generations. A software application developed by a small team can serve millions of customers simultaneously. An investment in the right cryptocurrency or startup can produce 1,000% returns. A piece of content can reach billions of people without proportional increases in production costs. But recognizing asymmetric opportunities requires a completely different mindset than most people possess. You have to think in terms of systems and leverage rather than time and effort. You have to look for points where small changes can cascade into massive results. You have to understand how different forces multiply each other rather than simply add together. The wealthy also understand that asymmetric opportunities often look like poor decisions to conventional thinking. Investing heavily in unproven technology seems risky until that technology becomes dominant. Hiring expensive talent seems wasteful until that talent produces breakthrough innovations. Spending years developing capabilities that don't immediately generate revenue seems foolish until those capabilities enable business models that competitors can't replicate. Most people miss asymmetric opportunities because they're trained to think about risk and reward linearly. They want guaranteed returns proportional to their investments. But asymmetric opportunities, by definition, involve accepting the possibility of complete loss in exchange for the potential of extraordinary gain. This requires comfort with uncertainty that most people never develop. This brings us to the fifth rule, which deals with something that destroys more potential fortunes than any external obstacle. Billionaires have developed an unusual relationship with failure that allows them to extract maximum value from every setback. They don't just accept failure as inevitable. They actively cultivate it as a strategic advantage. They understand that failing faster and cheaper than their competitors provides crucial market intelligence that can't be acquired any other way. This perspective is completely foreign to most people who view failure as something to avoid at all costs. They spend enormous energy trying to prevent failures that could teach them essential lessons about their markets, customers, and capabilities. They miss opportunities to gather valuable data because they're afraid of admitting their initial assumptions were wrong. Rockefeller failed repeatedly in his early business ventures. His first oil refinery partnership dissolved due to strategic disagreements. Several of his transportation deals fell through because he miscalculated market conditions. But each failure provided specific information about how the oil industry actually operated rather than how he assumed it worked. These lessons informed better decisions that ultimately created his monopolistic position. The wealthy understand that failure is tuition paid for real-world education. Each setback teaches lessons that can't be learned from books, theory, or other people's experiences. Failed product launches reveal customer preferences that no amount of market research could have predicted. Failed partnerships expose character traits that only emerge under stress. Failed investments highlight market dynamics that are invisible during stable periods. But extracting value from failure requires specific mental frameworks. You have to separate ego from outcome. You have to view setbacks as data rather than verdicts about your capabilities. You have to resist the natural human tendency to rationalize mistakes instead of learning from them. The wealthy also understand that failing fast is often more valuable than succeeding slowly. A quickly failed experiment costs less and provides clearer information than a slowly failing strategy that consumes years of resources before producing definitive results. They design their ventures to fail quickly if they're going to fail at all, rather than limping along indefinitely while consuming capital and attention. This connects to the sixth rule, which explains why most people never develop the psychological resilience necessary for extraordinary achievement. Billionaires have learned to completely separate their emotional state from external circumstances. They don't allow market fluctuations, customer complaints, or competitor actions to determine their internal experience. They've developed what could be called emotional sovereignty, the ability to maintain psychological stability, regardless of what happens around them. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending setbacks don't matter. It's about understanding that emotional reactivity makes rational decision-making impossible. When you're angry, fearful, or euphoric, you can't accurately assess situations or identify optimal responses. Your judgment becomes compromised exactly when clear thinking matters most. Rockefeller was famous for his emotional consistency during crisis periods. When competitors tried to drive Standard Oil out of business through price wars, he remained calm and methodical. When government regulators threatened to break up his company, he responded with strategic planning rather than emotional outbursts. This emotional stability allowed him to make rational decisions, while his opponents made choices driven by fear, anger, or desperation. The wealthy understand that emotional sovereignty requires constant practice. They develop specific techniques for managing their psychological state during stressful periods. Some use meditation or physical exercise to maintain mental clarity. Others create decision-making protocols that prevent emotional reactions from influencing business choices. They also understand that emotional sovereignty extends to how they handle success. Euphoria is just as dangerous as fear when it comes to making rational decisions. people who become emotionally intoxicated by early wins often make overconfident choices that destroy their progress. The wealthy treat success and failure with equal emotional detachment, because both are temporary conditions that don't define their fundamental worth or capabilities. This leads to the final rule, which determines whether someone builds wealth that lasts for generations or creates temporary success that disappears during the next economic downturn. The wealthiest people on Earth think beyond their own lifespans. They build systems and institutions designed to continue generating value long after they're gone. They understand that true wealth isn't just about accumulating resources. It's about creating sustainable value generation mechanisms that outlive their creators. This multi-generational perspective changes everything about how they structure their businesses, investments, and personal lives. They make decisions based on how those choices will impact their families and communities decades into the future. They build companies designed to solve problems permanently, rather than just profitably. Rockefeller created foundations that continue funding education and medical research over a century after his death. His wealth wasn't just accumulated, it was systematically deployed to address societal challenges in ways that continue generating positive returns across multiple generations. He understood that lasting wealth requires contributing to the permanent improvement of human civilization. The ultra-wealthy also understand that sustainable wealth creation requires building systems that benefit everyone involved, rather than extracting value from others. They create businesses that improve their customers' lives while generating profits. They develop technologies that solve real problems while building sustainable competitive advantages. They invest in infrastructure that benefits entire communities while producing long-term returns. This sustainable approach requires thinking about wealth as stewardship rather than ownership. The truly wealthy see themselves as temporary caretakers of resources that they're responsible for deploying wisely, rather than simply consuming. They understand that wealth, which isn't reinvested in value creation, eventually disappears, while wealth that's continuously channeled into solving important problems continues growing indefinitely. Most people never develop this perspective because they're focused entirely on their immediate needs and wants. They accumulate money to buy things rather than to build systems. They think about wealth as something to consume rather than something to cultivate. Now you understand the invisible rules that have governed wealth creation for centuries. These aren't quick fixes or simple strategies, they're fundamental operating principles that require years to fully implement and decades to fully realize their potential. Strategic silence protects your plans and concentrates your energy. Invisible discipline creates the foundation for visible success. Long-term thinking provides sustainable competitive advantages. Asymmetric opportunities multiply your impact beyond linear effort. Intelligent failure accelerates learning and market positioning. Emotional sovereignty enables rational decision-making under pressure. Multi-generational thinking creates wealth that outlasts its creators. These rules were never hidden, they just require the courage to follow them consistently over extended periods, while everyone around you chooses easier paths that lead nowhere permanent. The question isn't whether these principles work, they've been proven across centuries of human achievement. The question is whether you're willing to implement them in your own life, even when implementation requires sacrificing immediate gratification for long-term transformation. Real wealth begins in your mind with how you choose to think about time, risk, opportunity, and responsibility. Only after these mental frameworks are established do they manifest as financial results in the external world. If you're ready to think like those who've built lasting fortunes, comment below with the words, "I choose to play the long game." Share this video with someone who needs to understand these principles. And subscribe, because we'll continue revealing the hidden architectures of extraordinary achievement that most people never encounter. The rules are simple, but following them consistently separates those who create genuine wealth from those who spend their lives wondering why success always seems just beyond their reach.